In this PowerPoint video, you're going to learn how to do the discussions. Hi, I'm Professor McKeown, and I'm going to go step by step to show you how to do a successful discussion for any of my history classes. Now, this class that you're taking has been identified as a college-level communication and computation skills. In regards to all written assignments, the discussions for this class, according to the state of Florida, each student must demonstrate college-level writing through formal multiple writing assignments. So in other words, you must have a 70% overall grade on the discussions to pass the class. Even if you're showing an overall B in the class because you did really well on the exams, your final grade unfortunately will end up being a D due to not passing the written portion. I know, it doesn't sound fair, but it's a law of the state of Florida. So let's go through the various steps on how to write a very good discussion. Step 1, the question. Each week there will be a question that will be based on reading assignments and the lecture videos. The best way to prepare for a discussion question is to read the question, getting a general idea to what the question is asking. Step 2, watch the weekly video. Each week, I will post a weekly video pertaining to the discussion question for the class. Well, where is it? You might ask. Well, you could find it on the announcement page or into the content section under the written modules for the particular discussion, and also on the discussion tab. There will be a link under each discussion question. What I do in this weekly video is I tell you specifically the points I'm looking for in writing a successful discussion, but then you must elaborate on those points. Step 3, read the chapter or chapters that are assigned. Now that you know what I'm looking for in answering the question, the next step is to read the chapters assigned. Since you're going to have to expand on what I'm looking for as an answer, this is where analysis comes in, it is best to go ahead and read the entire chapter. Do not try to go to the index section and just take the attitude of, okay, I won't read the entire chapter, I'll just read that one part of the question, what I think it is, because then you might fall into a trap. So you don't want to go there, okay? For example, in one of my history classes, I had a discussion question on the United States and the war with Mexico, which happened in 1648. Well, some of the students, in reading the chapter, came to the Texas Revolution, which happened in 1836, and that's what they wrote about. They never read anything further than that, and therefore they fell into the trap and obviously did not answer the question, and unfortunately didn't get any credit. Step 4, watch the chapter lecture videos. Now this is also part of the requirement. As previously, you need one endnote from the textbook or the assigned readings and one endnote from the chapter lectures, not the weekly video lectures. That just does not count. So here I go into a more in-depth study of the chapter, and I bring in things that the book that we are using does not go into. So you only need to have at least one quote from the lecture video. Now these videos are about 45 to 60 minutes. Now here, since there is an outline, and my chapter lecture videos follow the outline, and you've already read the chapter before, then you could fast forward and come to the point. Please don't email me and ask me where it is. You have to do the legwork yourself. That's the whole part of history of trying to conduct research. Find where it is, listen to what I have to say and how I go into it and in more detail, and then you could use that as part of your quoted source from the lecture video. Step 5, answer the question. Now you might think, well, that's very simple enough, but you'll be surprised. You have to see what the question is actually asking you. One part, or is it asking you two-part question, such as a cause and effect or a compare and contrast, or looking at two periods of history? Look at the dates, because you might have a discussion question that would cover a period of history. That means you have to cover the entire period of history that's in the question. Let's say, for example, from 1955 through 1965, or from 1820 to 1850, or from 1000 to 1300 AD. What is the key word phrase in the question? It could be a verb such as evaluate, assess, analyze, apply, or the dreaded compare and contrast. Often history questions ask to what extent is a given statement valid, or in what ways did one event or condition relate to another. All these questions have one thing in common. They demand judgments about historical evidence. So be on guard for questions that start out with identify, describe, or explain. History questions are never satisfactorily answered by simply reporting information or just giving the facts, such as a question is usually followed by analyze or some other demanding mental activity. If you're still unsure what the question is being asked, then use the muddiest form, email me, or come see me in the office hours. But I ask you, when you ask the email, don't just do the standardized question, I don't understand what the question is asking. Be specific on what part of the question you don't understand. Okay? The requirements for the discussion. At least 2 paragraphs. You could write as many paragraphs as you choose to. And usually students who do very well write 4 or more questions. Now understand, you have been taught that with each new thought, there's a new paragraph. So don't just list the facts and try to explain each fact in one paragraph. With each fact you're presenting, that should be in a paragraph in itself, because you're listing the fact and then you're supposed to be giving analysis. The minimum requirement is 200 words in answering the question. This does not include the Endnotes information or the title you might include as part of your discussion. So even if you write 199 words, yes, you're 1 word less, you won't pass the requirement. Okay, and I'm very strict on that. Use clear and logical organization in writing in your school of thought. Bring in a lot of facts, but more importantly than just the facts, bring analysis to what those facts mean. These are formal writing assignments, so grammar does count, and you will be deducted a number of points for problems with grammar. So always proofread. That's why I always tell my students it's best to first write your discussion on a Word document, since they will pick up grammatical and also spelling mistakes. Periods of history are capitalized. Roman Empire, Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Age of Discovery, American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War, World War I, Great Depression, Cold War, Great Society, and so forth. Now, if you want to get this combat veteran very angry, just don't capitalize the United States. Legislative acts and edicts are also capitalized, like the Edict of Milan, Magna Carta, the Stamp Act, the Declaration of Independence, the Great Compromise, the Constitution, referring to the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the Pure Food and Drug Act. So anytime you read or hear me talk about any kind of act of legislative, where it comes from the United States, England, the Roman Empire, or so forth, those need to be capitalized as well. Step 7, the endnotes. At least 1 endnote is required from the textbook and/or video lectures, or you'll lose 5 points. You must use the Chicago Manual of Style. Failing to endnote in the Chicago Manual of Style will result in a failing grade for the assignment and a possible violation of academic integrity for plagiarism and/or fabrication. Writing should be in the student's own words and not a lot of endnotes. You must use both sources in writing from the textbook and the video lecture, as I stated before. For the first discussion, an exception can be made as long as the student first emails the professor through the course website explaining their situation before the discussion is due. Don't submit the discussion and say, hey, my book hasn't showed up, because that's not going to count. No more than 4 endnotes in total should be used for the discussion, because I want to see your words, not mine, nor the author of the textbook we're using for the class. Do not try to use quoted material only to answer the discussion. Generally speaking, for a paragraph, there should be really no more than 2 endnotes. And whatever you are quoting should be in 15 words or less. Now to the question, how do you insert that in that little number? Well, here is how I'm going to explain to you. So when you look at the Word document, which I told you that's what you should use. You will see the exponent right x2 right there, okay? So when you click on that and you put the number, starting with the number 1, it's going to show up like you will see here. Okay, very simple. No parenthetical citations are used with the author's name or, let's say, from my lecture. Please do not write according to so-and-so in their textbook, so-and-so, or according to the textbook. Never use according to the textbook. Never. That's a major faux pas because a textbook is written by an author. You have to give credit to the author. So there's no need to do that. That's the purpose of the endnotes, because this number 1 is going to tell me, the reader, where that source came from. But make sure it is in quotation marks of what you are using, followed by the number. So how should the endnotes look? The first endnote will have the author's first name, middle, and last name, and then in italics, title of the work, comma, and then in parentheses, the city of publication, comma, publisher, comma, year of publication, in parentheses, comma, and then page number, period. For example, number 1, David Emery Shee, America, A Narrative History, New York, Norton, 2019. That's page 67. For the lecture in class or the chapter video lecture, then you use my first name, middle, and last name, the title of the video lecture, the class abbreviation and number, the name of the class, and then in parentheses, it'll be lecture, because this is coming from Daytona State College, from Daytona Beach, Florida, and the date of the lecture or the date you assessed it on it. Don't put YouTube video. So for example, Michael McKeown, The Clash of Cultures, AMH 2010, United States History to 1877, then parentheses, class lecture, Daytona State College, Daytona Beach, Florida, February 10th, 2020, or whatever date it was assessed. The second time you use an endnote from the same source in succession, you're only required to use the author's last name, the title of the work, and the page number, or from the video lecture, my last name, and the title of the video lecture. So here we see as an example, She, America, A Narrative History, 69, McKeown, The Clash of Cultures. What is Ibid? The third or more times in succession of the same source, you use Ibid, followed by the page number, like you see Ibid 70. Now you notice there is no page number for the example number 3, Ibid right here. That is because it was similar to the previous one. So if it's coming from the textbook and that textbook had page 70, for example, and yet your third time you've used the textbook and it's coming from the same page, no page is required. There is no listing of multiple pages. So as you can see, yes, this is all correct. But once we get to the page number 67 to 70, so you're telling the reader that this is basically 3 pages, or really 4 pages. No, each page would have its own source. Now, yes, it probably could be 67 to 68 if that's, for example, you're starting your quotation and it ends on page 67 and then begins on page 68, then that is allowed. But other than that, no multiple pages. So here we see an example of the 4 endnotes that a student is allowed to use. Now, as you notice, the first endnote is from the textbook, the full information. You only use the full information once. The second endnote, they took it from my video lecture. The third, of course, is going back to the first endnote, as we can see here, and that's where you only said, as I said before, you're using the author's last name, the title of the work, and the page number. Then the fourth endnote, this tells me Ibid, that this came from the same source. Now let's say, for example, we're still falling in number 1 is the author of the textbook, number 2 is from my video lecture, and then number 3 you're taking from my video lecture, then it would just be McKeown clash the cultures, okay? And if you're still using my video lecture, then 4 would be Ibid. If you have any more questions about this, please contact me, email or see me in my office hours. Final thoughts and discussion. Please do not procrastinate. Now, I know a number of you will wait until the 11th hour, literally, after 11 p.m., and you're going to try to tackle what the discussion question means, and you find out, oh my gosh, there's a lot to try to write about. This will, unfortunately, for a good number of you, would lead to running out of time, and you won't be able to respond immediately to 2 students. Now, once you post your discussion, respond immediately to 2 students, okay? Use constructive criticism. Don't use things, I think it's crazy, or I love what you wrote, all right? That's not really helping. Explain what you liked or what you wanted to add to. When I say constructive criticism, what I mean is if they totally missed a question, point that out to them, okay? Also give them things like, hey, I think you should probably listen to Professor McKeown's weekly videos. They help out a lot. Now, let's say you read some constructive criticism. Go back and make changes. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, I left that very important thing out, it's okay. The whole part of constructive criticism is basically it's a peer review exercise. So you could repost a brand new post on there and make those changes. Now, I'm free to help you out, and a free critique is as long as you send me your discussion through the class email site by Thursday at 4 p.m., I will go over it and tell you specifically what you're missing, or I'll just say, you're good to go. Go ahead and post it and respond to 2 students. So please, don't be afraid to ask for help. That's what I'm here for. So good luck, and I look forward to reading your discussions.